Hey guys, and welcome to the first episode of my MLS off-season reviews. Now, today with the first one, we're going to be discussing DC United. And when I was first deciding which teams I should use for these, DC United was the first team that came to mind, mainly because I feel like they've had one of the most exciting off-seasons so far. Toronto has obviously had a very exciting off-season, but I want to save them for towards the end because I feel like they still have moves to make and they're still going to make more moves, and that's just going to get to be an even crazier situation than has already happened. And Vancouver has had an interesting offseason so far. Obviously, myself being a Vancouver Whitecaps fan, I'm not necessarily happy what's happened so far, and I don't really want to discuss anything about that till a little bit later. The Camilo wound is still open, so we'll discuss that later. Now, with DC United, a couple years ago, they were a team that made the playoffs. They were a team that knocked the New York Red Bulls out of the playoffs, and I figured that was what's going to happen last year. I didn't expect them to knock out the New York Red Bulls, but I expect them to be a decent team, a solid team. I expected them to make the playoffs, but that's not what happened. Obviously, their defense leaked a lot of goals. Nick DeLeon did not have great form. They couldn't score enough, and they let in too many. That's kind of what happens to bad teams. But when the offseason first started and the re-entry draft came along, they picked up two very experienced defenders in the first round. They picked up Sean Franklin and Bobby Boswell, who I think that was two of the best pickups of the re-entry draft. Sean Franklin, I like Sean Franklin. I'm a Sean Franklin fan. I know a lot of people think he's kind of old, but I think he's a solid player who can attack well. I mean, we saw that strike against RSL in the playoffs. I mean, phenomenal. And I think his defensive ability is still pretty good too. Bobby Boswell obviously knows the organization. He's been there before. And I think that just brings some much needed stability and leadership to that back line that they didn't really have last year. In the second round of the re-entry draft, they picked up Fabian Espindola and Nana Atakora. Espindola, I like that pickup a lot. I mean, second round of the re-entry draft pickup, dude scored at least 9 goals in his last 3 seasons. I mean, it's proven MLS goal scorer right there. And then Atakura, I thought he was pretty decent when he was with Toronto. Obviously, he had his concussion issues and went to San Jose. But I think he can be a solid backup for them. I hate to see players' careers derailed by injuries, but I hope the best for him. Obviously, in the offseason, they traded for Eddie Johnson, which when that first went through, I figured that was great. I thought it was so smart for DC United. I know that he wasn't getting his raise from Seattle, and I knew that DC United was willing to give him that raise. And I still don't think Seattle made the right choice. Whether or not there was locker room issues, whether or not there was attitude issues there, Eddie Johnson's a proof of an MLS goal scorer. And for a team that needs goals like DC United, adding Fabian Espindola and then adding Eddie Johnson, that's going to give you goals. If Nick DeLeon can get on form, that's going to be a pretty decent attack. Now they went to the draft obviously after they sold Jakovic, one of their other center backs, to a small fee to a Japanese team. My first thought was they're going center back in the draft. Now I didn't predict that they would trade away that first pick, but I did not think that they were going to keep it because I felt someone was going to try to trade up for Patrick Mullins. Obviously, that's not what happened. Philadelphia decided to trade up so they could take Andre Blake. Now, when they had their the second overall pick, they took Steve Birnbaum. And I thought that pick made the most sense out of anybody. Steve Birnbaum was the most MLS ready player not named Andre Blake in this draft. He had a solid year last year for California. He had a very good partner with him though, Christian Dean as well, who went number 3 of the Whitecaps. But one of the stats that kind of poked out at me when I first heard it during the ESPN broadcast of the draft was he scored 10 goals last year, and that's aerial dominance. I mean, obviously that may not translate over in the same caliber to the MLS because you're playing with the big boys now. But when you can score 10 goals in a season as a center back, that's impressive. Obviously, most of those came off set pieces. He gets up, he can nod the ball home, and I think that's a valuable trait for any defender. I think that's a great pickup for DC. I think he doesn't have a high ceiling as Dean. I kind of expected them to pick Dean, but Birnbaum's kind of the safe pick. I feel like he's going to be the best player, day one of the MLS season. Now, the main talking point I kind of wanted to bring up with this team was I'm a little confused what they're trying to do. Are they trying to go experienced or are they trying to go young? After a terrible season like last, my first impression would be, okay, we're historically a very good team. Last year, we did not have a good season. Let's break it all down and try to rebuild. That might have been what they're going for. They traded for Eddie Johnson. They got Birnbaum. They picked up plenty of players in the re-entry draft. But some of the players they picked up are older players. Now, obviously, with the younger players, you want some experienced players to help bring them along. But there's a fine line between having some experienced players and having a bunch of over 30s, over 32s on your team. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I think having that experience and having those older players is very valuable to any team. I mean, in Vancouver, obviously, since I'm a fan, they had Joe Cannon and Jay DeMerit, and those guys kind of acted like leaders last year. Obviously, Cannon has since left, but you need those older players to help develop the younger players. So I'm a little confused what they're doing. I still think they need to add more young talent. They brought in a new homegrown player as well, so maybe we'll see how that develops. I wish the best for DC United. I know there's a lot of DC United fans kind of nationwide. They're kind of they probably have one of the bigger fan bases out of MLS teams. And I really do wish the best for them. They had a poor season last year that probably took a lot of their fans by surprise. Probably took themselves by surprise. I think they have made some additions that are going to definitely lock up that back a little bit and allow for some more goals going forward. So a solid offseason, in my opinion, from DC United. Overall, I think they've done well so far. Maybe their moves aren't over. We'll discuss that, obviously, if they've made any more moves when I do my end of off-season review in general. One last thing I wanted to say is I will leave the link to my Twitter in the description below. So if you guys want to follow me there, I'm not really using it much at the moment because I obviously use my personal Twitter account. But if you guys want to follow me there, then I would definitely switch over and use that as my main account. So I'd love to be able to talk with you guys and have you guys tell me your points and allow me myself to tell you when a new video has been put up. So actually, one more thing to say before I go. Go Hawks. I am a big Seattle Seahawks fan. Today is the Sunday. It's Championship Sunday, the NFC and AFC Championship games, and I really want my Seahawks to beat the Niners. I'm a little scared, not going to lie. We do have home field advantage, so hopefully that translates into something. But I wish you guys a good day, and I'll see you guys on Wednesday.